Welcome back, everybody. Dr. Jonah Schenker, leading for deeper learning. I am excited to be with colleagues, with superintendents here in Ulster County.
Anthony White, Superintendent of Schools, Wallkill Central School District.
Hi, Dr. Gwendolyn Roraback, Interim Superintendent for Saugerties Central School District.
Paul Padalino, Superintendent of Schools, Kingston City School District.
Today we're here talking about leadership. We're talking about this moment in time. We're talking about New York Inspires. We're talking about all of these things, holding students at the center. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everybody. Dr. Jonah Schenker, leading for deeper learning. I am super excited about today. I get to sit with three colleagues, three friends, three leaders in Ulster County that we don't just get to talk about the work that's in front of us, but we get to do it together, and that's an amazing thing. And before we go on and we'll kind of frame out a little bit about leadership and about each of you, we'll talk a little bit about this moment in time to be in leadership. We'll talk a little bit about New York Inspires, and we'll talk about anything else you all want to talk about. But I want to highlight that the relationships that are represented here at this table are long-standing. I started, next year will be my 17th year at Ulster BOCES, and my day one assignment was with Dr. Gwendolyn Roraback as we entered into the Onteora School District doing some coaching. I had the opportunity to work with you, Anthony, as we thought about teaching and learning for many, many years and thinking about pilots and academies and project-based learning in Wallkill. And well, you and I have been conspiring for quite a long time, thinking about innovation and really anything that was going to be about benefiting kids. Dr. Padalino, you said let's go. So here we are together with a couple of microphones and an audience. Let's get started. So Dr. Padalino, Dr. Roraback, Anthony White, leadership. Let's just allow whoever is listening to get to know you a little bit. What brought you to this moment in leadership? As you look back, what are those significant moments for you? Anyone can start, and here we go.
I mean, I'll start. Yeah. I think leadership is seeing examples, right? And lead by example. So like I always looked up to coaches that I had, adults that were around me, and I tried to take their best attributes, instill them in my values, and then lead by example. Yeah.
And I want to not dig into that right in this moment, but as you talked about that, you talked about people and experiences. You didn't talk about necessarily the books or the academia. You're responsible in that journey, and that's going to be, I think, critical as we talk about what's in front of us.
I think that talk about examples of going through. I think all of us could say this. You saw the people who did it right and the people who you didn't think did it quite so right. So you take both those sides of it and think, okay, I'm going to make sure I do it the way the people who did it right and learn from the way other people made mistakes. So you kind of try to bring the best and make sure you try to avoid some of the potholes you've seen other people take along the way.
Mm-hmm. And as a young adult, that was hard, right? Because you were like, you looked up to all your adults and you were like, is this the way I would want to do it or not do it?
Yeah, definitely connections and relationships. And I'm here in this moment definitely because of a sense of just courage and fearlessness of, yeah, this needs to be done and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to build a team so we can do it together.
Awesome. And a little bit, just so kind of for context, Kingston, Wallkill, and Saugerties. Just tell us a little bit about your district. Again, we don't have to do a deep dive, but just how many schools, your student population, so that, again, the audience has a context as we talk about New York Inspires, changes, the community in which you are trying to kind of actualize that work.
Yeah, so the Kingston City School District, we're a city school district, a diverse school district of about 6,000 learners. We have, our population is like I said, very diverse. I mean, very big growing Hispanic population. About 30% of our students are Latino, and we have 11 schools. We have, and I think one of the things I like, and I think is really interesting about Kingston is we're urban, but we're suburban, and we're rural. So we have all three of those things. We're over about 98 square miles. And so it's not only are we culturally diverse, but we're geographically diverse. And you bring all those kids together at Kingston High School, to culminate their experience in the school district. And it's kind of eclectic.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that you said you like that complexity as a superintendent. I know you like it in terms of what it represents, but it does present an incredible challenge as you think about how you do the work across rural, urban, suburban, city there.
Yeah, and it opens up a lot of opportunities, and it opens up an opportunity for us to create relationships among those students.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we are just north of Kingston in Saugerties, New York, with 2,349 students today and about 549-ish staff today. And we do not have the diversity that Kingston has. Our L population has gone down to 69. Geographically, we go all the way up to Hunter, Tannersville, and then over to Woodstock, and then down to the Hudson River. And then the unique thing about Saugerties is we have a lot of folks who were raised there who return. They want to come back home. And that is a very unique experience there.
And Wallkill is the most southern district in Ulster. We do partner a little bit. We're by county. We have a little bit in Orange County. We have 5 schools. We have a population of about 2,800 students. Our population has been declining, as is with every school in New York State. We're pretty diverse with Hispanic population. The numbers have been going up in recent years. We're really rooted in agricultural. It's a historically agricultural farm area, but pretty small town, hometown feel. If you watch a Hoosiers movie and you'll see like Indiana, small town, cornfields and stuff, it's pretty laid back.
And so before we kind of dive in and talk about the moment we're in and the transformations in front of us, I just want to kind of center students in the beginning of the conversation. And so as you think about your district, what needs to be true, or what do you hope for every student in your district? Superintendents, the amazing opportunity and an amazing responsibility to be the caretaker of a full community of students and staff. And so what are you working towards? What must be true in Wallkill and Kingston and Saugerties for the students?
I would say for Wallkill, this is my 12th year there, first year as a superintendent. We have a high chronic absenteeism. So engagement is important. We have system and structures and stuff, but like really giving the students the opportunities to get engaged as to not just fulfilling graduation requirements, but also getting life lessons. And our motto going into next year is how can we take down the classroom walls so students know that they're learning all the time when they're in school and in life.
Yeah. And I'm super excited that, and again, we're not going to dive deeply into the conversation about attendance or truancy, but that, in that sharing, the word engagement came up. I align deeply with that conversation. I find often we're talking about attendance and student problems or home problems without talking about the power of engagement and actually what's happening inside schools.
I mean, just to piggyback off what I was saying before, I think previously it's been like a checklist as to this is what I have to do to get through high school, to get that diploma, right? And how can we change that mindset? And with New York Inspires, it's really, hey, how could this benefit you for the rest of your life type of deal?
Yeah. And when we think about learning in other contexts in our own lives, when we've really connected with it, it isn't a checklist, right? It's something that we are drawn to. So, Gwendolyn.
Yeah, so in Saugerties, we've really centered for students and adults, because anything we ask the students to do, we ask the adults to do when we begin with our leadership team. And we had the 3 E's, and one of the E's is engagement. So it was engagement, equity, empowerment. But honestly, in addition to that, would love to see an umbrella of joy. We want our Sawyers to have a joyful learning experience that's real. Our work has really been rooted in Amy Berry's engagement continuum. And, you know, from passivity or disruption all the way up to students driving their learning. And when we did learning walks last year, we noticed our students were really participatory, but we need to push them to be drivers of their work. So that work is really making the adults aware of that as well.
Right. You know, and as Anthony mentions engagement, as you talk about joy, and this idea of like we have to make our learning these things. I think that's really where the dilemma sits as we think about redefining learning as one of the transformations, because learning as a behavior and as an action doesn't have to become joyful. It by nature, when it's done right, like it is joyful. And so I think often when we talk about these things about like what do we have to do, the question that's equally important is like what do we have to stop doing?
Right. And I think we also need, on the opposite side of that, I think we also need to stop over helping. Like when we do these learning walks, I see so much over helping of adults, because by nature in our profession, we are helpers. But we also need to create space for them to have productive struggle. Right. And if they don't learn that, then they're not accruing all those skills they need for life. So it is this balance of, yes, there needs to be joy, but they also need to learn how to figure things out without an adult swooping in.
And part of that, again, as we get into these changes, I think is baked into the fabric and architecture of school. Like when we have defined periods from September to June, where we've defined like that's where success has to happen for this particular grade. And you've got to do all of these things to get to this formal assessment, which is going to be doing it here. It becomes a checklist and teachers like moving through. And if some of those changes take place that disrupt that structure, maybe there'll be more room for exploration and failure and reflection. But I think again, there's an interplay between the 4 transformations to really get those things changed.
I like your phrase, productive struggle. More philosophically looking at what we think here in Kingston for our students, I always see us as, we give our students the ability to make choices. And I'm not talking about choices necessarily during the school day, but make choices in life. We prepare them to have options. For us, with every student that walks across that stage when they're done, I want them to be able to say, I can do whatever I want because I was prepared to do that by the Kingston City School District. And I think when you look at some of the things inside, the portrait of a graduate, and look at the global citizen, right, that kind of thing, that they know what's going on out there. They know they're prepared to walk out into the world, whatever they want to do. And I think also having that mix of the type of things that you were just expressing about having all these choices and breaking down some of the barriers, tearing down the walls, but also having those choices for those kids who are those traditional learners. So we have both those paths to go down for engagement for both of them. But I think that that's just from my seat. I always tell them I'm like the least powerful person in my district. The most powerful person is this teacher standing in front of the students. And I think that there's if the kids can walk out, our students can walk out of Kingston High School and say, I was prepared to do anything I want to do, and I was exposed to be able to kind of make that choice. I feel like that's a success.
And I love what you said, Paul, about like let the kids make the decision, right? Because reflecting on my own learning, the lessons I learned best are when I failed, right? And if we could give kids an opportunity to do that within the school where there's a safe space and they could be corrected, that's huge. So I love that you framed it that way.
And I think as you 3 talk about that, there's kind of 2 points that I want to emphasize. First, Paul, you talked about choices. I had 2 conversations over the last week, one locally and one with folks that are bringing in kind of a national perspective. And this idea of college and career readiness, which I don't really subscribe to personally. I don't think that there's two. There's one skill set that we ought to be preparing students so that, as you mentioned, they're choice ready when they leave school. College is not a destination at the end, right? Like career is the destination. There are certain careers that require the progression of a 4-year degree. There's certain careers that require the progression of 4+2 or 4+ doctorate. There are some that are just up to 2-year. There are some straight out of high school or through apprenticeship, right? But when you ask individuals across sector, from college to industry, like, what do you really want to see? They don't identify two isolated skill sets. They talk about those durable skills. And the language might be different, but that's what the portrait represents. A body of competencies and proficiencies so that any child who's had all these experiences is choice ready to go wherever they want. And so that's really kind of the nexus or the connection to thinking about the New York Inspires work. Before we get into New York Inspires,
I think the one just other
Yeah,
thing
please.
is I think predefining what success is a mistake we make as educators. You know, predefining this, that you'll be successful when you do this, and you know that success is different for everybody. For, you know, you might have some students' success is going directly to an Ivy League school. Success for someone else might be able to know that I can navigate my way to backpack across the United States. Successes shouldn't be predetermined by us. Again, I just think we got to just prepare them to have the choices and the options to do those things. Equip them with the skills they need for that.
I'm figuring out how I can personally engage with the success, which would include a backpack in this moment across the United States. But I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. But again, I will go back to, I think that's inherent in the legacy structures of the industrial model, that success has been defined by this like single academic pathway. And I've shared this before, but I was good at school and I had privilege. I knew how to do the school game. And as a rising sophomore, but I thrived with a hands-on environment and had a conversation with my guidance counselor as a rising sophomore and wanted to go into the carpentry program and was told that's not for you. You're not that kind of student, right? Like those definitions are baked into the structure of school. And that's really the hope of bringing leaders together in this podcast, is to help share and share out stories of how we might be able to do the work to not only meet the requirements of what are in front, but to change some of those things that we all know like are just inertia has carried them over as systems and structures in our school.
I mean, Jonah, if you asked us our path to where we are, right? I'm sure my path is vastly different than Gwendolyn's and Paul's, right? And I mean, and it's like, I wasn't that academic in school. I went to school because I wanted to play sports, right? And so there are kids that are there for particular reasons, right? And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was going to go into service. And then it was like, oh, you can play baseball in college, right? So then I was like, well, how can I continue with this? And then I fell in love with education because I went into education to coach baseball, but then I was teaching and I was like, I really like this, right? And I'm the only one at the table without a doctorate here, right? And so it's like, I went a path, but it's like the life experiences got me to where I'm at. Whereas I'm sure everybody has their own little story as to, and that helps with our leadership as to identifying with subgroups to say, hey, how can we help this subgroup?
Yeah. I mean, how can we foster and understand and lift up like every student's individual passions and purpose and their story to help them carve out rather than cramming them into the containers that we have, saying like, this is going to have to work. And I think there's a path forward through this work. Before the New York Inspires work, acknowledging that we are in a complex time. And I'm not here to talk politics with you all. That isn't this podcast. But we've had conversations around the state of the world and how that shows up on our doorsteps each and every day as students walk through those thresholds, but also the adults. People are carrying a lot on their shoulders, and we see that emerge in lots of different ways in schools. And so number one is really a check-in with how you all are doing. We often know that those charged with being the caretakers often don't have caretakers. And so I'm not looking to have a public-facing therapy session, but feel free
You're
to share.
crying already.
That's it. Anthony is tearing up. But that's the circle work that we've been doing together. I know you love that deeply. But how are you doing in this context, and how do you do the work of leadership in complex times when it is heavy? Because we all know that learning and engagement and experiences can't happen unless people are being cared for and being taken care of.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to care about people, and you really have to care about the work, because our fiscal systems really statewide aren't funded well. So the emotional backpack for superintendent is very heavy fiscally. And then our staff, they come in and they have their own anxieties and depressions, and the mental health issues has skyrocketed, not just for students, but for all of our staff. So, it depends on the day and the hour and the minute, whether I'm going to put on like a shepherd pastoral hat, or I'm going to put on a commander hat, or I'm going to war. It's, all day long. What do you need? Or let's peek behind the curtain and pull out a wizard hat and think creatively so we can get everything done. I think superintendents really need to be versatile right now. And soon as I'm here with you, all of you, I'm like, oh, my people, they're the only ones who know.
Awesome. I like the wizard hat.
I haven't had a chance to wear my wizard hat.
But I think Gwendolyn said the word, and I'm not saying that we are this, but you got to think of this. It's fearless was, I think, was the thing. You got to, and anyone who knows me knows I like stupid sayings and quotes from movies, and I think, but like they said in The Godfather, this is the business we've chosen. No one told us this was going to be easy, or that everyone was going to love us, or that that those kind of things were going to happen. And then we knew we were going to have to make the hard decisions, but we made the commitment to do that and take the hits that come with it, because we believe in doing, what needs to be done for our students. I think there's, the polarization of the world right now, plays out in our districts in a very similar way, and especially a place like Kingston, where we do have, we have our roots in activism, and right near Woodstock and that kind of thing. There's that lack of middle ground, and we used to be immune from it. We used to be seen as that was the place that this stuff, we kind of left that aside, but it's seeped into everything we do every day. And I think there's one of the hardest parts for me over the last few years is kind of a general distrust of institutions, right, including schools now, and I've always said we're a big, slow-moving target, so it's pretty easy to take, to hit a bullseye shooting at us. But that's a struggle, and I think there was a time when everyone believed we were really there every day for our students, and I'm not sure everyone believes that anymore. And it's our job to try to gain that trust and have those conversations. But it's difficult, and I don't think it's really you can't make it personal. I think it's really a statement about how we are, in our country right now.
I mean, in Wallkill, and I'm new, so this is my first year as superintendent. I love the students, right? So I always try to find joy. Sure, there's parts of the job that aren't pleasant, but one of the things that I've implemented was I've been co-teaching with teachers. So I put out there and say, hey, I would love to come in and co-teach a lesson with you. So I thought I was going to get ghosted by the teachers, and to their credit, they didn't. April's been K-6. In May, I'm going into 7-12 classrooms. I've been in about 5 classrooms, and just pre-planning with the teachers and going in and physically teaching the lesson and not just being a fly on the wall, but contributing. And it's awesome, right? And that's how we got started. I was 11 years as a teacher, and you're going in there, you're seeing the kids smile, and they're happy to see you there as a guest, and you try and tell them what you do. And, they're like, "Oh, Mr. White, you're the superintendent." I was like, "What does the superintendent do?" And it was great. One of the fourth graders said, "Superintendent things."
Yeah, that's it.
Right? And so
snow days, that's what I do.
So you try and explain it to the kids, and you're like, wow, how can you explain this to the kids and stuff, and so they understand. And a fourth grade lesson we did was on colonies, and would you survive back when colonies existed and stuff. And I related it to a school district, right? Working together, cooperation, what resources do you have? And it just brought joy to see the kids smiling. So yeah, there's going to be some things that aren't always going to bring joy, but if you remember the things that do bring you joy, that will get you through the times where it's not bringing you so much joy.
My secretary has a thing. She monitors my attitude and behavior, and she'll come in and she'll say, there's a soccer game at 3:30. And I'll say, yeah, I can't go to that. No, there's a soccer game at 3:30. Or they're doing this great project over at Miller Middle School today, and you got an email inviting you to go. And I'll say, yeah, I got this. And she says, no, you got an email inviting you to go. So that's her way of saying, why don't you go out there and see why you're here?
And that's hard, right? To say, hey, let's put this on the back burner to go do something to re-engage us, right? But that's the meaning of it, as to it reminds us why we're there.
And it always makes you feel better.
Correct.
It always does. I've never done that and felt worse. I always feel better.
100%.
So I appreciate all of that, everything from Godfather quotes to wizard hats and superintendents who are teaching amazing stuff. But I think as I'm listening to you all and thinking about the conversations that we've had locally and the conversations I'm getting to have on a broader level, and as we think about New York Inspires, just beyond just the things that we have to accomplish to do to school, but really as a platform to disrupt some of the things that we aspire to change in our systems. Can we leverage this moment to create schools where it's about the love of students, where adults actually have schedules that can lean a little bit deeper into the values that we want to be inherent in that allow us to switch between commander, wizard, right? Where people can be who they need to be in the moment, and the people are there to receive that, and that's okay. Moving past the idea of you got to chuck your baggage at the door. We know that doesn't work. So now the moment, New York Inspires. We know 2019, Blue Ribbon Commission goes 12 recommendations, goes to department, 4 transformations, adoption of the portrait of a graduate, redefining learning and credits, decoupling of Regents assessments, and moving to one diploma. What are you thinking about? How do you describe it in this moment? Not tactile, but what does it mean for you as you think about, okay, I'm the superintendent of a system that's going to be there during this, probably the potential largest school transformation in New York history. What does it mean to you?
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I'm ready. We're already doing it.
Yeah.
It's exciting, but yet scary, right? I mean, the exciting part is that there's a lot of opportunity to make relevant change, right? The scary part is that if you try and do it by yourself, you're going to be unsuccessful, right? So we've really taken the opportunity to use it almost like a strategic planning, but for curricular, and do our buildings kind of fit the mold as to where we want to go. So it's really taking all of our subcommittees, having them talk and having it be centered around the transformations of New York Inspired to say, hey, listen, we have parents, students, teachers, administrators, outside consultants coming in talking to say, what does our community want and what's it going to look like in Wallkill? But yet also it's scary because you're like, okay, they're going to tell you something and now you have to try and implement it.
I think Gwendolyn was right. We're doing this. I mean, I feel, I wasn't like knocked over by this thinking, oh no, we can never do this, because I think, between our collaboration with Ulster BOCES, between the different programs and the different pathways to a diploma that we currently have, if you study them and you access them and you make sure that kids are lined up to where they want to be as far as those things are concerned, we're already there. This is better, obviously. This is a little more, this is deeper, as we're kind of here talking about deeper learning. This is deeper, but the scary part for me is, education is deeply rooted in a lot of people. Most people who work in our schools do that because they had a great time in school. They loved school the way it was. Mm-hmm. So they're just kind of perpetuating that, and myself included. I mean, I liked school. I mean, it was like a good place to be. So what you do with something like, you try to replicate that experience. So to bring people who, and we don't have a school full of people who just came out of college who are steeped in the Portrait of a Graduate or deeper learning. We have people who have been doing this work, and good work, and they've been effective doing it, and they've created success for students. Now being told, no, we're going to do it like this. It's scary to have to tell them that and to have to find ways to support them in doing that, and it's scary for them. I think it's change is tough, and this is a high magnitude change.
It is. It's all mindset,
Yep.
and it's deeply, deeply rooted in equity. Like really powerful questions. Well, this just resurfaced last week with a teacher. Well, what exactly is an 88? What does that mean in fourth grade? What is an 88? So for us, because we were on a path of project-based learning, student-driven project-based learning with voice and choice and civic action and getting business partners, real business partners in the community, having them come in and give us feedback. We were doing this for 2 years. Then we were awarded the planned pilot, one of 23 in New York State. And we're doing it in concentrated pockets. So we started 4 years ago as part of our 3 E's, engagement, equity, empowerment. We did a micro-credential of the 3 E's. But one of them was a book study on equity and grading. And that was super powerful because teachers who have been teaching for almost 25 years left saying, wow, I'm going to try something new. And that was so deeply powerful. And then this year, it is our second year as a planned pilot. And we've doubled from 5 teachers to 10. And the success story there is we have a teacher who is retiring this year. And he said, okay, I'll try it. And that creates such an incredible ripple effect when you can have these small pilots of your early adopters, but when you can strategically design them so that you have your credible veteran teachers that whether they're a good teacher or not, they're respected among their peers. And then you have the go-getters and then the cautious ones. And building those pilot groups is how we are strategically trying to do the work deeper.
Awesome. So lots in all of that to kind of probe at already doing it. This idea of strategic planning and that process as it relates to it. And I think something that you called out, which is these folks who got into school, experienced school, and are carrying out school, are generally kind of the folks that are there. By coming on this podcast, you have joined the Rebel Alliance as well, though. So
I did not sign a waiver for that.
I'm more of a Sith.
So, but I want to ask you something, as there's a difference in you versus some of the other folks who are sitting here at the table, is in terms of your maturity.
That's a nice way to say it.
In the position, he means in the position. Let's clear that up in the role. But But
Yeah,
you've
you
seen
have experience.
you've seen things
Far more than all
you've
of
seen SED initiative. You've seen change, and I think it's important to highlight like is this moment in and this idea of like you've been working on some of these things, but you talked about like this cross section of all four being talked about, the interplay of them like being deeper. Does it feel different in this moment than what you've seen in your tenure?
I think that, in the end, I'm finishing my 21st year as a superintendent, so I'm the old person at the table.
That's amazing. 21 years as a superintendent.
And I think that, so yes, and we always talk about it, and I have conversations with them like, well, it all goes around again. It was here, it was this, and then it was this, and now it's back to this again. They just give it a different name, repackage it before. But I don't think it ever was based on the idea of students having so many options before, about opening up to what the students need. A lot of these changes in the past were curricular, were standardized testing, were those kind of things that we were going to do to kids, not what we were doing for kids necessarily, and not for and with kids. That's a different thing, right? So how many students had a choice in when we decided to go to the 3 through 8 testing? There wasn't a lot of input there, right? We decided to go to it. It was passed down by the feds, blah, blah, blah. But this seems different because it is more inclusive, right? We're looking at different ways to get students to where they need to go. Instead of this is the way you go, we're just changing how we measure how you got there, kind of thing. So I think, it's a different feeling. The hard work in this is kind of going back. I always go back to the same thing. The hard work is always with the adults, right? Mm-hmm. The hard work is always with the adults, and being able. And if we were General Motors, and we decided to go to all electric cars, we would shut down for a year and retool our factories, right? We can't do that, so we have to figure out how can we provide the support that our faculty and staff need to understand this, to execute this, and to make sure we're successful with this, while still, doing the job that we have. We can't do students. I don't want to do this students, but that's really what should happen. We would need this massive time to get everyone on board and to truly understand what this is. Because there's people out going, oh, this is just no accountability for kids. They don't have to do anything. They just walk through and get a diploma. To get them to really understand what this is all about. I think that there's, but it feels different. Yeah, it does feel different.
And kind of to that end, and I think this is where, sharing a little bit about your approach kind of at your district. And then we can touch after this, things that you're doing that have been and are leaning into these changes. But as we think about the work of BOCES and supporting districts, right, we have been thinking a little bit broader in terms of like the ecosystem for New York, right, the interconnected work to make this happen. But we've been engaged in kind of a year-long process with kind of leveraging the playbook as just the backbone to the conversation or the process. And each one of you and teams, we're very fortunate that we've had 8 districts coming together with design teams. To do some learning together, to take a look at some tools, to have some conversations, to engage communities. And then you each go back and actualize that. And all of the districts, all 8 are doing it in their own ways. You've got a way that you're carrying it out. Many of you are to that idea of like not making it additive, but you've already got some strategic planning teams or district-wide teams and folding it into the work of that, or bringing together groups maybe that didn't work together to leverage that moment. Could you share a little bit about kind of the process that we have collectively been going through and kind of how you're leveraging that in this year, which was really about understanding like what it is, hearing from staff, students, stakeholders, to not just like jumpstart in our administrative cabinets and saying like, here's what we're going to do, but like to have those conversations about what does this really mean or could mean for Wallkill or Saugerties or Kingston?
one of the things we did, I mean, and just talking about the things we've done moving up to, again, I go back to just our partnerships with Ulster BOCES and the things that we're doing there. And when I look at the Hudson Valley Pathways and the things that we're doing there, they're different for students and a lot of things, a lot of those programs. But one of the things we're doing, and I know Dr. Schenker knows all about it because he's been facilitating. We have what's called a district leadership team, which is not what it sounds like. It's parents, it's students, it's community members, it's business leaders, it's administrators, it's teachers, it's students. And we used to put together our district comprehensive improvement plan. That was the chore of that, and it was a chore of that group. And we would go through and we would do we'd set the goals and we do fill out the forms and make sure we submitted it and all the things we need to do. And we decided. And this is how I think we're going to be successful. We've decided to, instead of put this on top of that, to make this that. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to, one of the problems in education is we get new things that get put on top of us, but the things underneath never go away. There's new.
They never tell people to take something off their plate.
That's right. So there's always something new to do, but the other stuff we're still doing that too, and then you lose track of whether that's effective or not. Also because it's so at the bottom of the pile. But I think that doing that, taking systems and structures that we're using for something else or something that kind of meshes with this and replacing it with this. And I got a lot of great feedback that the night that you and Amanda were there, and it wasn't Amanda, it was Sarah, were there, and I think people felt like they did something that night. They didn't do a chore. They felt like they learned something that night. They experienced something that night, and there was a very different vibe from that group when they left than there is when we slog through here, everyone take your colored pen, and we're gonna write it out on this sheet and this form that's given to us by the state. So I think there was a much different feeling. And when I went back and did the work with my administrative team from our first meeting with all the districts, one of the most, and you would know who this was, probably all would know who this was, one of my most, I don't want to say jaded, but just grumpy administrators came to me after and says, we need to do more stuff like this. Mm-hmm. So it was like, she felt like I'm coming to all these administrative meetings and we're doing whatever. This was real for her. And it's a veteran administrator who thought that was really a good use of our time. And I think that's, again, taking the structures that we have and not throwing stuff on top of them, inserting this and finding ways, we all know how to do creative things, but anyway, twist this to fit that. Mm-hmm. And then it just becomes what you do again. It just becomes what you do.
I mean, in Wallkill, we've had longstanding committees such as a curriculum committee, a technology committee, facilities and grounds, and we have a district-wide comprehensive educational planning committee, which is everybody from the district. It's about 45 people, parents, students, teachers, administrators, and it's people that are on these other committees come together and they discuss it. What we didn't have was a design team committee. So we started a design team committee to talk about the Portrait of a Graduate and New York Inspires Transformations. They've been meeting monthly. And that committee is made up of parents, students, but also committee members from the other committees. Right. So we're looking at it like a spider web and all going to the center as to this is what it is, but this is a Portrait of the Graduate. This is what we're doing. And we're being really strategic not to add on. Right. And saying, hey, this is thinking differently. Right. If we're going to do something new, what are we going to take away? And we went through a similar process when we were looking at our reading program, right? We were Fontes Pinnell and leveled readers, and then we went to Orton Gillingham and multi-instructional approaches. And that was a big change when we did that part. So we're taking really the same approach as to saying, hey, this isn't on top of, this isn't like to do more work. This is really to be more efficient and effective. And it's working. We have lead teachers on those committees, and it's really that shared leadership as to our assistant superintendent has been spearheading some of those committees, and as well as our other for curriculum, and then the other one for business has been doing the business aspects of it. And it's really their leadership to say, we don't have the answers. We're coming to you to see how you could help us get the answers and give us ideas. Right. And then we could see and look at it more globally and broadly to say, hey, how can this fit here? And that's been working, right? Because then the teachers are buying in. The students that are on the committees are talking because they're excited about it, saying, oh man, like new courses. We're offering 3 new courses next year. And that's all because of student choice of sports journalism, music as poetry, and agricultural science. And that was because that's what the students wanted. And they were like, okay. And this year we did intro to teaching because people were like, well, I don't know if I want to go into teaching, and my parents say I can't spend that much money to take a college course. And so I don't know if I'm going to do it. Right. So we were like, how can we help our community out by exposing the kids to something? And that's the scary part, is it's more student choice. But the other part is making sure that they have the foundational skills to make the choices that benefit them, such as the reading and the mathematics and the writing and stuff, right? So that's the part because as a high schooler, they may say, yeah, I'm going to do this, and then they want to change paths, right? And so we have capstone courses, and we implemented Steel by Literacy. I know we're one of the last districts to get it, but we're going to be offering that next year. So it's really getting the teachers and the students to feel empowered that they're being listened to and implement it.
Oh boy. So our story is so drastically different because of where we were. And so what Saugerties did was we participated in the Ulster BOCES series, and deeply appreciative of that I could bring some folks on my cabinet so we could think very deeply. So I had that at the table. Then I had someone, an admin who I trust very deeply, to lead the plan pilot, and she needs that creativity and that outlet and believes deeply in it. But as a district, there was a lot happening. I didn't have an assistant superintendent or deputy because that was me prior. So I was wearing literally all the hats.
Were they wizard hats?
I didn't get to put that on that much.
Just wondering.
Yeah, it was a lot of warrior hats. But
a lot of helmets.
Yeah, helmets. So we had to really pause. It was not the appropriate time to go out into our public and do empathy interviews when we were rebuilding trust. I am happy to share that because we paused and took stock of where we were and just, fostered energy into those pockets of brilliance that they could continue to grow. But a sweeping wide committee, we could not do that in September. Absolutely not. So we really just stuck to what we knew to be true, which was we're going to rebuild trust. We're going to work with the folks who we know are with us on this, but we're not going to push anything. And then in March, I had a district leadership team, and we used to have 67 people. And after this year, I think I only had 20 people, but it was the right 20 people. And we did the sailing exercise of what are the rough waters and where's smooth sailing. And that was such a beautiful entrance for us to come together in March and just, okay, let's just assess where we are. And that was really healing and helpful for us and needed. And now I know next year we will build the momentum up. I'm not worried about that. But if I forced it, it would not have gone.
Yeah, and I think as you all share, what jumps out is that this can't be prescriptive, right? There can be fidelity in like approach and tools shared and questions we might ask, but it has to allow space for the unique and local context and systems and kind of moments that you're all in to be able to walk and lead this forward. And that's really been kind of our thinking and how we're trying to structure support for this, is so that you can take the kind of container and adapt it and shift it for, again, what it means for Wallkill, what it means for Saugerties, what it means for Kingston. We're getting close to our time. I have 2 more questions. One, I'm going to kind of shift into a very kind of concise share. and then we'll kind of close out with the last question. So as we think about this work, there are things you're already doing that lean into this work. So if you could think about one example that leans into the changes that we're talking about, and one thing that we ought to stop doing as we move forward, that's what I'd ask you to kind of share before we close out.
I think we need to stop grading the way that we're grading. I mean, I think we need to have our students self-assess more. I think we need to have our students be able to articulate success criteria, because even in being a planned pilot school, which is something we are doing, it is very gray. We haven't been given a lot of guidance. There is a lot of ambiguity. We have had multiple meetings with our planned pilot teachers because it's been very scary. Well, what do you mean? So we have the waiver. Oh, and we have the waiver for 5 regions. So we are creating all this criteria right now because we haven't been given guidance, and it's exciting, but it's very scary. And we know, so some of the things we are doing well is the projects where we are soliciting feedback from our community partners, and our students are receiving feedback in real time, and they're revising their projects. Like whether it's a Shark Tank of a business model or other things that are happening, or sort of like research poster galleries. Recently, we give a district award at the board meeting, and I wanted to give it to an entire class because they're doing this class 3rd grade project on plastics and reducing plastics. And the teacher politely declined. And she said, well, we're not done. We haven't attained our goal yet. And I said, no. You have. Your 8 and 9-year-olds are advocating. They've collaborated with our food manager for the district. This is huge. These little children have already made sweeping change, and you're not finished with your project, and that's what it's about. It's about the process. I think we do need to rethink some of the things that have always been done and haven't been thought, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and so I'm hearing the bringing forward, there's some pedagogical shifts in terms of project work or process work that are carrying forward, and numeric grading perhaps is something that we should be looking at. And you used 88, and then you mentioned grades. So I remember 10 years ago, and I think to give credit, I think her name was Heather Buskers. I think that was her name. Maybe it's not, but she was talking about numeric grading and project work. And this example I've taken and stolen and used, and this idea of a 90, right? A 90 is like, we put it on refrigerators, we bring it home, and then we talk about the real world. And she had this graphic where there were 10 steps to 2 scenarios. There's 10 steps to a procedure in heart surgery, and there's 10 steps to packing a parachute. A 90 just isn't going to cut it. But we don't talk about the learning, and that was the emphasis, that like numeric grades are static. It's a moment in time versus the process. So I appreciate the call out to grading. And again, if we trace it back, again, legacy structures, they were designed to rank and sort students. It's hard to do belonging work and all work when you have a system that inherently was designed for that purpose. So something you're bringing forward, something you're leaving behind?
Really excited to celebrate the work that we're doing with project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. Our rollout is non-threatening. We're not putting it in our curriculum maps, but we're giving resources. So if they want to do one, but we've made it part of our summer program and our after-school AIS program, where that is project-based and inquiry-based. And part of that is to have the teachers become comfortable with it, right? And seeing like, oh, I could do this now, I could do it in the classroom as well. Something I want to leave behind. the notion that I feel we're doing fine. The assessment piece worries me a little bit. I'm not all on board with the grading. I'm not. I think there needs to be some type of proficiencies, whether it's a numeric grade or something. And there's some part of competition that I like, and I think grades do give that piece, and that sometimes makes people drive forward. So I understand it, but I'm just not there. Could I get there? Sure, I get educated on it a little bit more and maybe sell me on a little piece of it, but I don't think I'll go full tilt because I like the competitive part. I just think that we need to continue to look to improve and be lifelong learners. And change is scary for teachers, especially. I mean, Paul said it earlier about, they were in school. We have veteran teachers, and having them sign up for a PD or being given a PD and buying into it is hard, right? I mean, so I just hope for open-mindedness and how we could get people to be more open-minded as to, hey, this is where we're going. It doesn't mean that we can't shift once we start.
Right. And so at an upcoming meeting, we'll do a slice on numeric rating for the whole team just to begin that conversation. But also, I think as you talked about, like the teachers and the work you're doing, like providing the resources and getting them exposed or like learning some of the elements to PBL. I think a big part of that as well is getting them comfortable with actually not having to do anything except for let go of some control. And that's a hard piece, but those happen simultaneously. What about Kingston?
Yeah, I think we're doing so many things. I think about our internship programs that we have, dozens upon dozens of kids out into the community with all the community partners that we have in Kingston. I think about, again, so I can keep thinking about Hudson Valley Pathways, and that is kind of just a very, very different look at this, but it almost embodies the work of New York Inspires. But I think one of the things that's kind of a little lower and maybe not as visible is, we're seeing more teachers feel more freedom to try things like portfolio assessment, to try things like project-based learning in their classroom. We've brought in Javon Hunter to help with some of our teachers in creating equity around doing that, using that doing that from an equity lens. And it's like, it's just the things that are happening in those classrooms are amazing. So those are things that you see and you just kind of see it growing. So there's the big stuff, but there's I think really that grassroots stuff with that teacher's just not afraid to try it kind of thing means you're creating that environment where they can do these things and they feel comfortable doing these things and not having an administrator come in and go, you're doing this wrong kind of stuff. Leave behind so many things. I think leave behind, as we talk about grading, and how we measure a student by grading, but leave behind how we sort kids before they even walk into the building. Let's leave that behind.
Formally and informally.
That's right. We sort them before they walk into the building. We shouldn't determine students' future before they have the opportunity to go out and embrace it. So that's one of those things, and it wouldn't be April, whatever, without saying the other thing we need to stop doing is we need to stop looking at funding education the way we used to. We have to stop looking at that because movements like this, opportunities like this, they are labor intensive, they are people intensive, they are time intensive, and those things aren't for free. And the way we're doing, the way we're funding schools really devalues education. And while the politicians will tell you, we spent more on education this year than ever before. Of course you did. That doesn't make sense. All you do is, that's just by design. It's more, less, the more money they have, let's go and see what it is in different, eras, money. So I think, there really needs to be a hard look at that and how that, and not how that relates to, our community's values and our students' needs, not how it relates to voting. We know there's that street between the legislative building and the education department. I mean, it must be a busy street because it seems like there's nobody ever goes across the street to talk to each other about what's going on.
It's a lot of traffic.
Yeah, and it is. We all tried to cross that street normally, right? So I think those those are things that we've been talking about for ages. And like I said, I'm old, so we've been talking about
I
money.
said mature.
We've been talking about how schools are funded for a long, long time. And I think it's, there was some attempts at good work, but it just gets squashed.
So we'll wrap there, and I'll just share with you. I had a conversation this week with Jim May, who's the CEO for New Tech Network, and we were walking through a school and had the opportunity to have 2 student ambassadors lead the tour, and they were fabulous. And he called us after to this idea that, like, in conversations after a walkthrough, that you might hear, wow, those 2 students are exceptional. And he stopped us saying, no, they're not. All students are exceptional, but some have invitation and some have an environment which allows it to happen. And that I am carrying with me as a mirror, as a lens, as a reflection to kind of monitor this work as we move forward. Like, is this work creating the invitation and environment for all students' exceptionality just to emerge, to be seen, to be heard, and not constrained by how we've defined success or how we assess or how we grade, but really through those opportunities. And so I just want to thank all 3 of you for the work that you're doing. It is amazing to get to work in partnership with you, to laugh with you, to do this work. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Thank you.